came for the surgery he needed to repair a hernia. Charles
Hey,
and
River
Lori
Nation.
flew
So
to be with us
we are
at the
watching
Children's Hospital in New
the
Orleans.
Lori Vallow Daybell sentencing for the killings of her two children, and yeah, and everybody else is live streaming it. So I'm like, why not? Let's live stream it. Let's see what happens here. I've talked a lot about Lori Vallow Daybell, not extensively, but just how horrible of a human being she is, and a lot of parallels that I draw with my father. So I figured, hey, we might as well see it through. We'll see what happens. So welcome.
Help support and care for Canaan. That is part of why this is so hard. How does a woman that would go to that length for a baby boy a few short years later brutally take his life? It is mind-blowing, and I will never understand.
This is the actual this is her this is the grandmother reading a statement, by the way.
We loved every minute of raising him. We poured all our love, energy into ensuring he grew and thrived. We knew our unconditional love, and that time was priceless. Canaan's growth and milestones were clear evidence for our love for him. We knew the adoption was the best decision for his future, to have energetic parents, siblings, and access to the types of schools and services we didn't have in Lake Charles, Louisiana. With his departure, we felt a grief that really can only be compared to the grief of losing someone to death, which is now a feeling we all know too well. We had barely made it 30 days before we were standing on Charles's front steps to love on our baby. When the door opened, there he was in his little baby walker, and I swear I saw tears in his eyes at seeing us. He had missed us too. Before I could take a step, Larry swooped him up in his arms, and at 11 months old, JJ wrapped his tiny arms around Larry, laying his head on him. There it was, the connection. It was still so strong. We never lost that special connection with JJ. We were always his love, comfort, and safety. JJ's adoption was final in July of 2014, and Charles and Lori moved with the kids to Hawaii, living in a house that backed up to a closed golf course.
Wow,
and it was perfect for JJ. It was like having the biggest backyard ever, and it was heaven for him. He would go outside and he would run and run and run and run, and I ran and ran to chase him and catch up to him. Somehow, he never ever ran out of energy. JJ also had no fear, and everything was an adventure. He climbed on everything, and he could do it in the blink of an eye. We have pictures sent from Charles of JJ sitting on top of refrigerators and cabinets with a grin on his face. Listening to testimony during the trial and hearing the defendant claim to others that he turned into a demon for doing what he had always done devastates me. How dare she take his energy and adventurous nature and turn it into a reason to further her murderous conspiracy? We would visit Hawaii every 4 to 5 months and stay 10, 14 days. We needed to soak up as much JJ time as we could. On one trip in the winter of 2015, JJ stayed home with me while Charles and Lori went to church. I was making a big pot of gumbo. I had to bring a little bit of Louisiana home cooking to Charles, and JJ was excited to help me. We pulled up a stool. He poured ingredient after ingredient. I can still see him standing next to me pouring chicken broth in the pot. Afterwards, he climbed on the counter and just watched, taking it all in. It is a memory that I will always cherish and dearly hold on to. During our visits with Charles or Lori, Charles or Lori would comment on how JJ would do things with us that were in stark contrast for them. He always awoke at the crack of dawn, never sleeping any later. However, when we would visit, we would have him sleep with us. JJ would ask Pawpaw to pat his back, just like when he was a baby, and fall asleep. He would sleep until 9 or 10, which astonished them. There was never a doubt he had an innate and unbroken attachment to us. Each visit, no matter where they lived, Lori always expressed her deep appreciation that we gave them the greatest gift ever in JJ. Lori loved to entertain and have family visit, ours and hers. She invited family and friends to Hawaii and friends from Hawaii to Arizona. 0 is the number that same mother murdered that same child she expressed her deep appreciation for. It is mind-boggling, and I don't think I will ever be able to understand it. Back to JJ, he was incredibly smart. He was reading at middle school level by the time he was 4. I remember being in a store with JJ and on the aisle with eye drops, and there he was reading off the labels, Visine, cysteine, antihistamine, one long word after another. I hadn't seen him do that before, so you can imagine my surprise and delight. As we stood there, he would occasionally stumble on a syllable or pronunciation, but we took the time to go through the words and helped him learn. As he got a little older, his special education school in Arizona told Charles he was a math savant. He could calculate anything. I continually wonder what he would have become, what type of man would he be? What did Lori deprive the world of? JJ loved school, loved his family, friends, and cousins, especially his cousin Braxy.
That's great to know, Dr. MLS. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
All feel the immense pain and loss of him being gone. Not only was JJ smart, but he was also funny, content, healthy, compassionate, and an empathetic child. JJ didn't show his empathy and compassion with hugs and kisses. In fact, you had to chase him down for those, but instead, with his gentle touch and speaking in soft tones, he would constantly stop to ask people if they were okay, if he could see or sense they were hurt. His world was fascinating and exciting with his huge imagination. He would put on concerts for his stuffed animals under our enormous
I think for me,
tree,
it's
playing the drums on buckets and pots and pans.
oh,
The joy he exuded and shared cannot be measured. I loved watching him, taking him in, and seeing how he approached the world. I never got enough of him. Now I've had all I will get for the rest of my life, and I will only have the precious memories to cling to. Now memories are how I feel the love I so desperately miss due to the heinous acts of his mother, the deplorable woman that chose to be his mother, the woman that 5 years earlier made the conscious decision to stand in front of a judge and swore to provide for, care, love, and protect him. When Charles and Lori married, Tylee was 3 years old. She was the most precious blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl. There was never any doubt that Tylee was an absolute mama's girl. When she was little, she adored Lori. I was thrilled to have a new niece, especially one as sweet as her. While Charles and Lori lived in Austin, we visited frequently. On one of our visits, we passed a roadside stand selling swings made from old tires. I saw one that had been made into a horse, complete with a saddle and stirrups. I grabbed Larry's arm and said, "Stop, we have to get that for Tylee." Her brother Kobe and stepbrothers Cole and Zach were always around her, and she needed something girly just for her, and she loved it. As a big sister, Tylee would put notes on her bedroom door, one of them being, "Do not enter." And as you can assume, even though JJ could read and understand the notes, it didn't mean he listened. After all, isn't that what little brothers do? He would storm into her room and she would laughingly tell him to get out. I think she did it on purpose, just to tease and play with him. It was hilarious to see them interact and warmed our hearts seeing them together. Tylee was 9 years old when JJ became her little brother. She loved him so incredibly much, and he loved her right back. She doted on him, and JJ loved every minute of attention he got from his big sister. The love they have for each other is captured in the last photo taken of them, both grinning and hugging each other. Hauntingly, this photo was taken shortly before and by the defendant hours before she murdered her own child, her sweet girl Tylee. have a niece that is a few
This is
months
just
younger
so
than
terrible.
JJ. Her name is Maddie. She and JJ loved each other and would spend days playing together when Charles and JJ would visit. On her 8th birthday in October of 2020, we were celebrating and singing happy birthday to her. The glow of the candles shining
Yeah, that
on
maybe
her
she
face,
felt she was
that huge
justified.
grin that kids get during the singing.
It's wild to hear how
Hit me like
she
a
was this
truck.
mother and then
I grabbed the keys from
flipped.
Larry and ran to the car, and I just bawled and bawled until I could compose myself enough to rejoin the party. I knew then that JJ didn't get his 8th birthday song, and it broke me. $1,536. That is how many days it has been since I've seen JJ, and how many days since I was able to see that same candlelit glowing grin and for being sung happy birthday. You see, the last time I was able to hug and kiss JJ was in May of 2019 when we celebrated his 7th birthday. It is just so wrong. He didn't get to have that joy and feeling of love of another birthday because his mother is greedy and his life was expendable to her. We never know when one of those moments are going to hit, but I can tell you that there have been too many situations in the past few years where we get slammed with the fact that JJ won't hit another milestone in his life, all because his materialistic, self-centered mother cruelly and brutally stole his life and him from the world. Lori's acts of depravity, cruelty, and betrayal have no limits. She murdered and stole JJ's daddy from him on July 11th, 2019. Next,
this is what she looks like.
she was trying to sell Bailey, JJ's adored and cherished service dog, his shadow and his best friend. When caught, she was confronted and forced to give Bailey back to his original trainer.
That's about as good as I can get it.
I can't imagine how that impacted
It's very, very
JJ.
blurry, but she's
Bailey
just sitting
went
there like this.
everywhere with him and provided him so much security and
Unemotionless.
happiness. 52.
Oh, now
That's how
she's
many
moved,
days after
as you can
Charles's
see.
death she waited, continuing her trail of destruction by taking JJ away from his home, his family, his school, his sense of well-being and normalcy by moving to Rexburg. JJ and Tylee were isolated and deprived of everything and everyone they knew and loved. 8. That's how many days later, until another act of treachery with the murder and desecration of Tylee. The immense sorrow I feel in thinking of JJ's last days and week cannot be measured. How did he cope with the shockwave of change, confusion, and chaos? Being autistic and just a child in general, he thrived and excelled with his routines and schedules, and nothing was routine at that point. How much grief and fear did he experience? The loss of his dad, his world was upside down. During those 2 months, I continually asked, to the point of pleading with Lori to let us visit JJ. She only agreed once and then canceled. The trip was for JJ to attend Charles's memorial services back home in Louisiana. Our FaceTime calls, something that had been the norm, were cut shorter and shorter until our last call on August 10th of 2019 that lasted for 35 seconds. This all started with her greed. Her greed for a $1 million life insurance policy and her lust for Chad. 72 days, that is how many days it took Lori to take everything from JJ. He lost his dad, his home, his best friend Bailey, his beloved big sister, and his life, all in 72 days. My sister said it best. My sister Susan said it best. She killed him slowly by taking away everything that mattered. The following 9 months were pure hell. Nothing else can describe the feeling of not knowing where the children were. We were continually learning more about the evil that the defendant was involved with, and our fears continued to mount daily. 319. That's how many days from the last time we were able to FaceTime with JJ until the moment we learned the children had been found in Chad Daybell's backyard, buried like animals. When the call came, a sound escaped me that only can be described as guttural. Our worst fears were confirmed and we were destroyed. The grief my family and I have endured is immeasurable. Lori cruelly took my big brother Charles, my adorable grandson JJ, and my beautiful niece Tylee and sweet Tammy, whose family I've come to know and love. Lori is undeniably a monster that has has not taken any responsibility or shown an ounce of remorse for her vile actions. She deserves to never again breathe oxygen as a free member of society. Her actions, dismissive behavior, and disinterest in court proceedings continue to validate her lack of accountability and remorse or any possibility to be rehabilitated. Lori Cox Daybell is a danger to society. Her body and manipulative mind are weapons used for her selfish greed and satisfaction. We firmly believe that she has zero mental illness.
Your Honor, I'm going to have to object. I think the court ruled on this particular portion of her statement. I'm going to ask that the court enforce that.
Give me a moment. Let me review the
Very good, Your
section
Honor.
of the written PSI in the court's previous order. The objection's overruled. This is not the section the court struck from the statement, so you can continue, Ms. Woodcock.
We firmly believe that she has zero mental illness that drove her to commit these heinous acts. Rather, she is driven by her greed and need to be the center of attention. During the trial, a jail call was played between Lori and her son Colby as she continued her manipulation. Today, it feels especially poignant. Quoting Lori, "They have made all these judgments. They think they know what happened. They think they know who's responsible. They think they know everything, but you don't know because you weren't there. And one day you will know. One day you will know what actually happened." Those are her words. It is the one truth that Lori has told since the beginning of her campaign of terror. We do know what actually happened and who is responsible. Lori. Today is the day that she will finally be punished for her manipulation, cruelty, and criminal acts. She has shown no remorse for the murders, the lying, the deceit, or the pain. During the trial, we heard Lori deflect and minimize her sister's grief. We heard her exclaim that she was trying to go on with life, that she needed to be happy, all while she was dancing on the beach and her children were buried in Chad's backyard. Only someone with no remorse tries to justify the cold-blooded murder of her children with her needs. We wholeheartedly believe she was not only complicit, but was an active participant in both JJ and Tylee's murders, making her crimes even more reprehensible. Your Honor, my family and I pray for nothing. Okay. We trust your wisdom in determining the sentence for the fraud. Sorry about that too. Strike that. Okay.
I was trying to coerce Jody Weber to join
We
the
believe there
conversation.
should never
but
be a
she's
reason
unavailable.
for her to be released from prison. She deprived JJ, Tylee, and Tammy of that right and should never be given what she so easily took from them. I'll leave with two final numbers. 3 for the 3
Yes,
people
the verdict
who were
was
murdered,
in
who will
June 3rd, I
never
believe.
forget.
Me
And
Jean.
finally, the number 1 for the defendant, the person that will never matter again once we walk out the door.
All right, Ms. Woodcock, thank you for the victim impact statement. Mr. Wood, are there any other statements to be offered into the record?
Yes, Your Honor. We've been asked to read Colby Ryan's statement into the record, and so I'll do that now.
Very well.
Older brother to Tylee Ryan, JJ Vallow, and the son of Charles Vallow. I want to say the generations have been affected by these murders. My children will never know their uncle, their aunt or grandfather, or even their own grandmother. Tylee and JJ brought so much light into this world, With their lives being stolen, I would like to share this. I believe that nothing could or will ever be the same. Tylee will never have an opportunity to become a mother, wife, or have the career she was destined to have. She will never be able to have the life she deserved. JJ will never be able to grow and spread his light with this world the way he did. He will never have a chance to grow up. My girls will never have a chance to know them in this life. My siblings and father deserve so much more than this. I want them to be remembered for who they were and not to be just a spectacle or a headline to the world. Tylee was sweet and kind, funny and bold, and she deserves to be seen as such. JJ was the most fun, sweet, and silly kid I'd ever known, loving and so smart. He deserves to be seen as such. Charles was a loving, kind, and generous father, and he did everything he could to help and provide for everyone around him. He deserves to be seen as that. This has affected me personally more than I could ever possibly put into words. I've lost my entire family in life. I lost the opportunity to share life with the people I love the most. I've watched everything crumble and be shredded to pieces. I have lost my sister, brother, father, and my mother. I've lost cousins and family, friends, and everything in between. These murders have changed everyone's life who loved these beautiful people, but I still know that God is above holding them in his arms and will provide a life after this to reunite. I pray for healing for everyone involved, including those who took the lives of all the ones we love. Thank you.
All right, the court's considered that statement as well at this point then. Mr. Wood, are there any other victim impact statements to read into the record?
No.
Very well. At this time then, as I mentioned, I'll move forward and have the state make its sentencing recommendations. After that, then the defense may make their recommendations. So Mr. Wood, you can commence with the state's sentencing recommendation at this time.
Thank you. Your Honor, I want to start with the question. What is the value of a human life? What is the value of the life of a 16-year-old girl with her life ahead of her? What is the value of a life of a 7-year-old boy with special needs? What is the value of the life of a mother and a grandmother? No matter how we look at what we are doing here today, we are calculating and assigning a value for the lives of Tylee Ryan, JJ Vallow, and Tammy Daybell. The defendant, now a convicted murderer, by her heinous and egregious acts, has assigned a value of 0 to each of these lives. The sentence imposed by the court today will represent the value that our community, through our court, places on the lives of these 3 victims. To the people of Idaho, this day should be more about the victims than the defendant. This court has multiple factors it must consider today, including the sentencing factors found in Idaho Code 19-2521. Justice requires the court to view all of the factors it will consider through the lens of the value of the lives of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. We echo the sentiments made by the victims or in the victim impact statements, and we just briefly speak about these immediate victims. Tylee Ryan was born on September 24th of 2002. She was murdered between September 8th and 9th of 2019. People who knew her called her witty, charming, intelligent. She'd received her GED in order to graduate early. We know she often cared for her brother. In evidence, we had videos of her with him, and she would call him my JJ. She loved Hawaii. She loved the beach. She had friends and family who loved her very much on both her father and her mother's side. Her father was Joseph Ryan, who predeceased her in 2018. Her older brother is Colby Ryan, with whom she shared a special bond. After Joseph Ryan died, Tylee as this court knows, was the recipient of Social Security benefits. And she actually shared a lot of those with her brother Colby, because that's the type of person she was. In serving search warrants, we accessed her Instagram account, where we learned that she was intensely loyal to her own mother. From her finances, we know she was a typical teenager. She liked to have fun. She was also independent and responsible. J.J. Vallow was born May 25th of 2012, and he was murdered between September 22nd and 23rd of 2019. As we heard earlier, he was initially born as Kanan Todd Trahan in less than ideal circumstances and was initially raised by his grandparents. He was then adopted by the defendant and her husband, Charles Vallow. He was loved by his family and friends. He loved to travel. Tammy Daybell was born May 4th, 1970, and she was murdered on October 19th, 2019. She was a mother of 5 children, and she's now a grandmother. She was a school librarian and educator. We know from her phone and from witnesses, she loved her children intensely. She was physically active, and she was kind. This court laid out the procedural history of the case. I'm just going to briefly touch on some dates that are important to the state and we think are important in terms of sentencing. The defendant met Chad Daybell in October of 2018, and within a year, her husband Charles Vallow was dead, her children were dead, and her boyfriend's wife was dead. In late August, early September of 2019, the defendant moved to Rexburg with Tylee and JJ and her co-conspirator and brother Alex Cox. Tylee was last seen on September 8th, 2019, and JJ was last seen September 22nd, 2019. Tammy Daybell was last seen on October 19th. On November 5th, barely more than 2 weeks after Tammy was murdered, this defendant married her co-conspirator, Chad Daybell. November of 2019, Rexburg police were contacted regarding a Jeep that was involved in a shooting in Maricopa County, Arizona. Later that month, J.J. Vallow was reported missing, and an investigation was furthered into Tammy's death, and law enforcement became aware that Tylee was missing. On December 12th, Tammy Daybell was exhumed. The next day, Alex Cox, one of the defendant's co-conspirators, died in Arizona. At the end of that December, the search for the children became public, and there was no response from the defendant or her co-conspirator. In January of 2020, the defendant was served with an order to produce children, and there was no response. Charges were filed for abandonment of minor children. And I want to be clear, the defendant had a right to silence. She did not have a right to disobey the order of the court to produce the bodies of her children. The Rexburg Police, the Fremont County Sheriff's Department, the FBI, and the Idaho Attorney General's Office devoted thousands of hours of work into looking for Tylee and JJ and to investigating the death of Tammy Daybell. On June 9th, 2020, Tylee and JJ were found in the defendant's husband's backyard. On May 24th of 2021, the defendant was indicted by a grand jury for the crimes of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan and grand theft by deception, the murder of Tylee Ryan, the conspiracy to commit murder, first-degree murder of J.J. Vallow and grand theft by deception, the murder of J.J. Vallow, the conspiracy to commit murder of Tammy Daybell and grand theft. And the defendant was convicted by a jury of her peers in Ada County on all counts on May 12th of this year. This court is required to consider the factors in Idaho Code 19-2521 subparen A in sentencing. And that particular statute reads, the goals of sentencing include the primary consideration of the protection of society, followed by the possibility of risk reduction through rehabilitation, deterrence of the individual and the public generally, and punishment or retribution for wrongdoing, and the impact on the victim. I want to talk about protection of society. This defendant has proven by her actions that she is dangerous to society. In Idaho alone, she was involved with 3 murders in a space of 6 weeks. While she's not convicted yet, I think the court can acknowledge that she faces 2 charges of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in Maricopa County. 2 of the murders in Idaho were her own children. This defendant violated the most sacred trust that exists in society, that between a mother and her children. And she did it for gain. She did it for money. A defendant who is willing to murder her own children is willing to murder anyone. Society can only be protected from this defendant by a life sentence without the chance of parole. There is no indication that upon murdering for financial gain that she feels any remorse. The amount of murders in her ledger show us she will seek to obtain money through murder again if released. And again, only a sentence of life without parole will satisfy the court's mandate to protect society. Courts required to consider risk reduction through rehabilitation. And it's tempting to just say there's no rehabilitation possible. What is rehabilitation? It's the process of restoring a person to normal and a constructive place in society. Some crimes render a criminal unable to fully be rehabilitated as a functioning member of society. Some crimes are so heinous that you simply lose your place among the rest of us. Killing your own children and your boyfriend's wife are these types of crimes. Rehabilitation requires ability, and there is literally zero evidence that this defendant feels remorse or responsibility for her crimes. The court heard victims talk about her behavior at trial, and I think that was an indicator that she lacks remorse, that she lacks accountability. The only way to rehabilitate this defendant at any level is to make her face the consequences of her heinous crimes that she has committed. And that is only possible through a sentence of life in prison without any chance of release. This court is required to consider deterrence of the individual and the public. Again, deterrence requires accountability. She has none. One thing that has been so shocking about these crimes is where it happened. Fremont and Madison County, Idaho. These are fairly rural areas. These are low crime areas. And I would note that this defendant, despite being labeled oftentimes by the media as a Rexburg, Idaho mother, is not a Rexburg, Idaho mother. She's not from Rexburg. She actually spent very little time here before she was arrested. And our community was left reeling by these crimes. The sentence that the court imposes today will be a message. And the citizens of these 2 counties have a right to the message, don't come here and commit these crimes. The citizens of these counties don't live these type of lives, and we don't want people to come here and commit these crimes. And this court has a responsibility to send that message, to give a sentence that gives that deterrence. It's the state's position that only a sentence of life without parole will send the proper message of deterrence both to this defendant and the public. And in line with deterrence, if these crimes don't merit that type of sentence, the state's unaware of what kind of crimes would. Finally, the court is required to consider punishment and retribution and the impact on the victim. The obvious impact of the defendant's crimes against Tylee Ryan, J.J. Vallow, in Tammy Daybell was death. And we can't ask Tylee, JJ, and Tammy about that experience because they're gone. They don't have a voice. We can't ask them what it felt like to be murdered. We can't ask them about the impact of their last moments. We have to instead look at the evidence and glean what we can regarding the impact of the murder of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. This court sat through a trial. This court saw the same evidence that the state saw, that the defendant saw, the jury saw. This court was the custodian of that. And so this court has seen how horrific these crimes were. And I want to talk individually about the impact of these crimes on these victims. So what was the impact on Tylee? We don't even know how she died. And why is that? Because her body was mutilated, it was dismembered, and it was burnt beyond recognition. We only know for a surety that it was her because of DNA testing. Her body was utterly destroyed, and she was buried in a pet cemetery next to animals. Her skull was literally separated from her body, and it was destroyed in such a manner we couldn't even tell 100% from dental records if it was her. The defendants put her body in a green bucket that melted from the heat of her burning flesh and put it on top of her skull in a pet cemetery. The impact of this crime on this victim was horrendous. We know she had puncture wounds in her pelvis, and we know from the testimony of Dr. Christensen at trial that those puncture wounds were received at or near the time of death, and they were consistent with stabbing, but not consistent with dismemberment. Again, the impact of the murder of Tylee was horrendous. And this impact will continue. Tylee will never get to become a mother, as we heard earlier. She will never have the opportunity to go to college. She won't get to choose a career to satisfy her curiosity or make any of the other decisions that young adults get to make for themselves. She won't get to travel the world. She won't get to marry. She won't get to be there for her brother Colby or her brother JJ. She won't get to spend time with her other family members. The impact of murder never ends. So the defendant's sentence must last equally as long. I want to talk about the impact on JJ Vallow. Again, we can't speak to him, but we've seen the evidence. We know that he died from asphyxiation from duct tape in a plastic bag wrapped around his head. The evidence showed that there was a struggle. And what was the impact on that little boy's mind as he fought for his life? His last moments must have been filled with fear and betrayal. And what is the impact of being buried like a piece of trash rather than receiving a proper burial? This defendant and her co-conspirators showed a callous disregard for human life by the demeaning way they treated his and his sister's bodies. Similar to Tylee, JJ will never get to grow up. He will never be able to reach his potential. He won't spend time with family, friends, and loved ones. What was the impact on Tammy Daybell? This defendant was not charged with the actual murder of Tammy Daybell, but she was charged with the conspiracy to murder her and convicted of such charge. I would note conspiracy is not a lesser included of murder. It is an equal charge. We know that because the sentencing by statute is equal. It is equally as bad to conspire to murder as it is to murder. Friend committed that actual murder. She was vacationing on a beach in Hawaii. We don't know exactly what Tammy's last moments were like. We can't ask her. We know she had bruising on her body that appeared to be at or near the time of death. Like Tylee, like JJ, the impact on this victim continues. She won't get to spend time with her children. She can't give them advice. She can't be there for her grandchildren, her brothers, and her sister. She missed her mother's funeral. The impact doesn't end with the individual and immediate victims. It spreads. It's the proverbial rock thrown in the lake that ripples and ripples and ripples. Murder tears at the fabric of society more than any other crime. Infanticide defies the law of nature. Mothers are meant to care for their children. When we consider the impact of the victim, it's appropriate for this court to consider the impact on the living victims as well. So when we talk about punishment, it has to match the crime. Not only do we need to protect society, do what we can to rehabilitate and deter, the punishment has to match the crime. Punishment must be, because this was the ultimate crime, killing your own children, killing your boyfriend's wife, the punishment must be the ultimate allowed by the law. And at this time, that is life sentences without parole. And we aren't asking that to be harsh. We're asking that because it's the right thing to do, because it's the only punishment that matches what this defendant did. I want to just briefly address some of the material found in the PSI. There are two mental health reports, one by Dr. Watson and one by Dr. Cunningham. Excuse me. And so what's in them? They say that this defendant suffers from a delusional disorder. She has grandiose and persecutory features, which I would note is something that many serious criminals have. It says she has hyper-religiosity with bizarre beliefs. More important, though, than what's in those reports, I want to talk about what's not in them. These are bare bones reports with barely anything more than alleged diagnosis. There's no analysis of her behavior, and that's important to note because psychologically we can tell more from what a person does than what they say. There's zero evidence provided or in those reports that the defendant's alleged mental illness contributed to her crimes. There's zero evidence in those reports that the defendant's alleged mental illness hindered her ability to know right from wrong. And in fact, the evidence is overwhelming that she did know right from wrong. She lied to the police, she lied to family members, and she lied to friends regarding the children of Tammy. Even their close friends who they shared some of these religious beliefs with, they lied to about the death of the children. And what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that Tylee and JJ didn't die because their mom thought they were possessed. If she truly believed that, she would have preached it because she preached all the time. She didn't tell anyone that because she knew why she killed them. She killed them for money. Her actions show afterwards, not a pattern of grieving. She goes on vacation to Hawaii. She gets married. In those reports, there's zero evidence provided of the defendant's mental state at the time of the crime. And again, all evidence shows that she was highly functioning at the time these crimes were committed. There's no evidence that she wasn't able to provide for her food, clothing, shelter, transportation. Again, she arranged a marriage. She arranged living in Hawaii. Again, and further in these reports, there's no prognosis other than there is one prognosis that states the defendant will make a positive adjustment to prison. Well, that's good because that's where she belongs and that's where she needs to go. Other than that, there's no treatment suggestions or discussion of possible treatment. Again, we'd ask this court to look at the defendant's behavior more than anything she says. At trial, the defense made it clear that they see Chad Daybell as the primary antagonist and that he should be blamed for these crimes and not the defendant. That was in the closing. I want to be very clear. This court is precluded today from even engaging in any analysis of that. Chad Daybell's guilt has not been determined yet, and this court cannot engage in some type of balancing analysis of guilt when he must be presumed innocent by this court until proven guilty. Upon being proven guilty, we can have that conversation, but not now. And further, even if he had been determined guilty, this defendant was charged with conspiracy. This is not a comparative fault case. On a conspiracy, if you're in for a penny, you're in for $1. And there's an important societal reason. There's an important reason that society has done that. It's bad enough when a person decides to commit a crime, especially one that includes victims. When a person teams up with another person and they agree to commit crimes, they become infinitely more dangerous. And so there is no comparative guilt. There is no comparative liability. This defendant has been found guilty by a jury, and that's all the court can consider in that regards. I would note this case is a perfect example of why we punish conspiracy the way we do, because of the damage that arose from these agreements to murder. So, Your Honor, for the sentence that the state recommends, before I state that, I ask this court to remember the victims. And what does justice for Tylee, JJ, and Tammy require? I note that the PSI made a recommendation, and it states, on January 3rd, 2023, the defendant's attorney filed a motion indicating they didn't important to note that while she has been diagnosed with a mental illness, she had the mental capacity to fabricate a story regarding the whereabouts of her children, change Tylee's Social Security payments to her own account, plan a wedding to Mr. Daybell in Hawaii, attend a family vacation with Mr. Daybell's family, lie to them about not having minor children, and relocate to Hawaii. She did all this with the knowledge her children's bodies were buried on Mr. Daybell's property. Those closest to the defendant describe her as a loving and devoted mother. They indicate both children loved her very much. A mother is meant to protect her children. However, the defendant has been found guilty of the brutal murder of her children. The focus should be that 3 innocent people, Tylee, JJ, and Mrs. Daybell, were murdered. The sheer devastation of all the lives impacted by her abhorrent actions warrants punishment. Therefore, it is recommended she be sentenced to a period of incarceration under the custody of the Idaho State Board of Correction. As this court is aware, PSI riders don't give specific recommendations for what time an individual should spend in prison, but the state does have that. This court is aware that the state's position has always been that justice requires this defendant face the highest level of punishment for her crimes, which at this point is a life without parole sentence. The heinous nature of her crimes and the aftermath of those crimes show an utter and callous disregard for human life. She committed these crimes for remuneration and financial gain, and she has shown no remorse or accountability, and she sees herself as being above the law. She has shown contempt for these proceedings and the process of justice for her children and for Tammy Daybell. At this time, the ultimate punishment is fixed life sentences without the chance of parole. And so specifically, for count 1, for the conspiracy to murder Tylee Ryan and commit grand theft, the state asks and requests a sentence of fixed life without the chance of parole. For count 2, the murder of Tylee Ryan, the state requests a sentence of fixed life without the chance of parole to run concurrent with the fixed life sentence for count 1. For count 3, the conspiracy to murder JJ Vallow and to commit grand theft by deception, the state requests a sentence of fixed life without the chance of parole to run consecutive to the fixed life sentences for counts 1 and 2. Consecutive sentences are justified here by the severity of the crimes, The fact that it involves different victims, and there was an appreciable amount of time between the murders of Tylee and JJ. For count 4, the murder of JJ Vallow, the state asked for a sentence of fixed life without the chance of parole to run concurrent with the fixed life sentence for count 3, but consecutive to the fixed life sentences for counts 1 and 2. For count 5, the conspiracy to murder Tammy Daybell, the state requests a sentence of fixed life without the chance of parole to run consecutive to the fixed life sentences previously requested. And for count 7, grand theft, the state requests the full sentence of 20 years. Pursuant to Idaho Code 195307, we request a fine of $5,000 to be paid to the next of kin of Tylee and JJ. I would note that Idaho Code 19-5307 includes a list of crimes, violent crimes, for which that payment to a victim may be granted. And it includes murder, but does not include conspiracy to commit murder. However, we'd also note that under Idaho Code, the punishment for murder is the same as the punishment, or I'm sorry, the punishment for conspiracy is the same for the punishment to commit murder. And so we'd ask for a $5,000 fine to be paid to the next of kin of Tammy Daybell. We'd ask for an order of restitution to the United States of America Treasury in the amount of $22,545, which amount was proven at trial to be the amount that was stolen from the Department of Treasury. I would note, Your Honor, compared to these other crimes, grand theft does not seem like a big deal. But I would note that in context of these crimes, this grand theft is a big deal. It shows her contempt, not only for her children, shows her contempt for everybody else, because that money belongs to everyone. Finally, pursuant to Idaho Code 18-112, we would ask for fines of $50,000 for each count of conspiracy and murder, for a total of $250,000 in fines. The state has essentially asked for the maximum sentence allowed under the law. The sentence is not only justified, it is necessary to satisfy the 4 goals of sentencing in Idaho. A sentence less than what the state has requested will not satisfy those goals. And I want to end, Your Honor, where I began. What is the value of a life? Of Tylee Ryan's life? What is the value of JJ Vallow's life? And what is the value of Tammy Daybell's life? Our communities and the people we represent, the value is great, it is immense, and it is immeasurable. No sentence given today will bring and horrific way imaginable. She profited from those murders. The defendant conspired to murder her boyfriend's wife. It wasn't enough to steal or to break the marriage. She wanted Tammy dead. And why? Well, there were $430,000 that they profited from that. And so what does justice for Tylee, JJ, and Tammy require? It requires that this defendant never have a chance for freedom because her victims no longer have that. This defendant forfeit the remainder of her life to prison because her victims were forced to forfeit their lives. What is the value of a life. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Wood, there was just one point of clarification I wanted to have on the grand theft recommendation. You recommended a 20-year sentence on that, and I just wanted to clarify. I believe the maximum possible under Idaho's grand theft statute is 14 years.
That's correct, Your Honor. I apologize. It is 14 years. We would ask for the maximum 14 years.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wood.
Oh, Your Honor,
Yes.
we'd like to double check that. I think it might have changed. Your Honor, I believe that has been changed to 20 years.
And I think is that only if it's by extortion? I think there may be a limitation. I'll double check, counsel.
Hi, everybody. Don't know if you can hear me or not. Oh. Can you guys hear me? Sorry about all that. So, my internet just cut out, but the live stream stayed on. So, thank you all for staying. So, I guess we'll wait to hear on this little recess what happens with Lori Vallow. Thank you. Shout out to everyone still hanging out, waiting for Collier. Yeah, thank you so much. My internet has been a little sketch, and because I was trying to show the screen with you guys, I was using a different browser. I was using Chrome. Normally, I use a different one, and so it wasn't working properly. So I don't know what it is. We've had some internet issues here lately, which is a total bummer. But thank you for hanging in. So, I would say, what do you guys think? I was trying to get a little guest, but Marisol had to go out. So I was trying to, yeah, what do you guys think? I mean, obviously, what we all think is she's horrific, but I can't get over that Lori Vallow is literally sitting there. And how the judge allows her just to sit there and do that. It's just it seems sort of like a mockery of the court, but I guess she doesn't really care. I think that as we were all talking, as I'm trying to make my hair look presentable, I think as we were all saying before, I think she legit thinks she's justified in doing what she did. I think that she truly believes that she was carrying out the work for the good of humanity, well, definitely for the good of herself and the good of Chad Daybell. And I think that she believes that. She's indignant. And she legit believes that, yeah, she probably thinks that she's a hero as well. I think it's really hard to wrap your head around because she's so delusional. I just lost my little Aura ring. I've lost it twice now. Yeah, I think that she's just completely delusional. Let's see if the internet will play nicely again. And we'll see if there is more happening. Come on, internet. Let's play nicely now. Let's go to our good friends here on YouTube. Oh, you're welcome, Marie Hathaway. Yes. So how is everybody? So let's do a little mental health check, too. How is everyone doing watching this material? Let's all keep in mind that we're all healthy and stable human beings, that we would never do this. Yeah. Oh, you think that I'm wrong, Molly's mom? You think think you're wrong. I think that she... Oh, I'm not excusing her behavior, just to make sense of that. You think she's doing and she's acting better than everyone else. Yeah, I think that I don't think this was done. Let me rephrase that. I don't think that she did it because she was making some sort of sacrifice for people at all. I think she believes, I think she's delusional. I think she believes that what she was doing was for the good of all humanity, but it's also to glorify her, to make her, because if she did this, she becomes Chad's right hand at this imaginary seat of the throne. You know what I mean? So like, it's all about her. It's very solipsistic. It's not that she's doing this. She's not a martyr. She's martyr. She's trying to make herself into a martyr. She's not a martyr. So just to be very clear. Yes, please call your. Thank you, Collier. I had to ground myself many times throughout. Yeah, she's crazy. And she's indignant. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that she's a. I think that she is a. Yeah, I think that she's just completely. She's completely indignant and completely delusional. But I think I feel that she believes that she's justified and entitled, and it is all about her. It is all about her getting to that next level, reaching the hierarchy of whatever she was doing with Chad Daybell, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that I think that is my takeaway from this. Oh, and it says live reaction. Yeah, my internet is really wacky. It says the court is currently on a break. Oh, hey, my little thumbnail showed up, though. That's nice. And here I am looking at myself live streaming on YouTube. It's very funny. But no, in all seriousness, I think that she, I think she's a very dangerous person. Very, very dangerous person. Obviously, she's not getting out anytime ever. So, yeah, let's see what you guys have to say. Paige Matthews, I had a second. I made sure I checked in with you because you are my favorite when you go live with the travel. Thank you so much. I don't know. I totally forgot this was happening, by the way. That's why I didn't plan a live stream. I literally went on YouTube. I got a new drone. A little small drone because my drone is very old. It worked fine, but it wouldn't take off within certain areas. So I got this little DJI Mini Pro. Oh, see, this is the internet again. What is happening here? This is wacky. I don't know if you guys can still hear me or not. I don't know what's going on with this thing. So let's see. I'm back. Can you guys hear me? I don't know what's going on with the internet. I apologize. It said it might have been a Chrome issue. Although I was in Firefox, which is usually the best one, so I don't really know why it's getting wacky. But here we are again, back at it. But I am glad that you guys. I'm glad that you guys, found this as intriguing as I did. So, anyways, I was telling the story. I got this drone. And I was trying to fly it yesterday in Santa Monica, and it wouldn't take off. It wouldn't connect to my phone. So I was getting ready to Google or go on YouTube and find out, like, how can I make it connect to my phone? As I have this little controller for it. And it didn't work. And then I saw that this was live, and I was like, oh, I got to let you guys know. Mover Nation, what's going on? Did I have plastic surgery done? No, I have not had any plastic surgery ever done. I had Kybella injections done a couple of months ago right here. That this doctor I was doing a trade with. No, I've never had any plastic surgery. I've had one surgery in my life, I guess, for my wisdom teeth. That's it. No plastic surgery. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet, Sasha. Thank you. That's very sweet. But yeah. Yes, hearing, but no image. Oh, so you can still hear me. You just can't see the image. Yeah, that's weird. Anyways, so, yeah. No plastic surgery and no desire to get plastic surgery. I've never even had Botox, by the way. the Kybella injections that I got, like I said, I think it was in May. Was it July? Yeah, it was like 2 months ago. That's the first cosmetic procedure I've ever had done. No, it's literally a doctor was like, here, you should try this. And we were doing a trade for videos. Oh, thank you, Laura. That's very kind. The government confirmed that aliens are real. Didn't they confirm that a while ago? Ah, thank you. I am Maria. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. So the government confirmed, hold on, the government confirmed that aliens are real. Okay, so yeah. I guess my question is, do we need the government to really confirm that? Like, do we really think that we are alone with all we know about space and the infinite universe that it seems to be out there that is absolutely completely incomprehensible to us? Do we actually think that we're alone? I never thought that. I have never thought that my entire life, that we are somehow alone in the universe. There's no way. So I thought, why would we do it? What's doing with your drone? Just having fun? I mean, no, the drone is to make content for you guys. I want a drone that, because the one that I have is older and the tracking works, but it's not nearly as good. So this one is lower, is under 249 grams, which means I can fly it anywhere without certain specific permits or insurances or anything. And the quality is really amazing. But so I can have this follow me. So when I'm mountain biking or doing activities outside, I'm on the beach, the drone will follow me, which is more content for y'all. So I'm going to use it to make some really amazing content. So like I started boxing at the gym, and then I've literally flew it above the gym the other day where the boxing platforms are. I was just trying it out. I literally just got it a couple of days ago. So, but the whole point was trying to figure out how to connect the controller, which is this, to my cell phone, because normally they have controls that are, that use your phone, but this one does not. Because my old controller used the phone, and I was not really down with it. So I've studied drone license, but haven't gotten it. Yeah, it's it's interesting. It's like getting a what is it, the F1A or FA1 pilot's license. What is the question? Hi, Collier. Explain my favorite tattoo. Well, I'm going to do a tattoo video, but all right. Well, this one right here. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. This is really awkward to do. All right, hold on. Let's see if I can. Okay. There we go. That's good. Okay. So, if the camera can focus, let me see here. Let's see if I can make it focus. All right. Is that focusing? Okay. So, this tattoo here, if I can move my arm. Okay. So, this says FYTN, which stands for Find Your True North. So, it's not, oh my God, this is the most awkward thing ever. How would I? All right, I'm going to figure this out. Hang on. Oh, yeah, this might work. Okay, cool. Let's see here. All right, let's do this. Okay. All right, so this is an anchor. Wow, this is a whole process here. This is an anchor. And this says FYTN, which stands for Find Your True North, which stands for Find Your True North. See, with the close-up shot, now you guys can tell that I didn't have plastic surgery. Kidding. But also serious. It stands for Find Your True North. So there's an anchor, and the anchor is for my mom. And this is FYTN. Sorry, that was a whole acrobatic thing to show you guys the tattoo. It stands for Find Your True North, which I'm going to actually start putting on my t-shirts in my merchandise. But yeah, find your true north, which is always reminding me to, well, find my true north, what I love in life, to do what you love. I got it after I made A Murder in Mansfield. And because I used to say, oh, okay, now I've found my true north by doing what I had wanted to do, accomplish coming out to Hollywood. That was a big goal, right? So that's what I did. No, it's all good, Rhonda Weaver. No, it's a good question. I just, yeah, so, and the anchor is for my mother. So my mother loved nautical stuff and loved nautical stuff, loved the ocean, which is also partly, I suppose, why I love the ocean. So the anchor represents her, and she's like my anchor, right? She's the person in my life that grounded me. Yeah, it's just in a weird place. But yeah, so there's the regular anchor, and then it says FYTN. So it kind of says like, it's like fighting, but not really fighting, not spelled that way. So I was thinking about doing a bunch of merchandise that has like a whole theme around this, like die fighting, try fighting. I don't know. It's a whole thing in my head. Yeah, I'm going to make I'm going to make a tattoo video. Bree Mountford, who is one of my Patreon supporters and is always on my Instagram lives every Tuesday, she has been asking me to do this for a while. And I used to do tattoos. So when I used to work with a lot of big and famous bands, we would always do tattoo videos of them explaining their tattoos. So I was like, I've got to do my own. So that's, oh, look who's here. The Princess of Trouble. Hey, come here. Come here. Hey, come here. Come here. Come here. Come here, silly one. Look who's here. Look who has arrived, who snuck out of her cage. Marisol, say hi to everybody. Say hi. Say hi. The lighting is a little harsh for you, my friend. There we go. Let's get better exposure because Daddy's a cinematographer, so Daddy knows these things. Lucky. Say hi. Hi, everybody. Hi. 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 What does she do all day? That's a great question. What do you do all day? What do you do all day? Do you just sleep? You sleep. You bark sometimes. You eat food. You get treats. You get lots of treats, don't you? She gets lots of treats. We go on walks. And she's figured out how to sneak out of her playpen a lot. So, because she's very crafty. Aren't you? Are you very crafty? What are you looking at? What are you looking at? You say, ba, 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 sha? Say, ba, 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 ba? Ba, 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 ba? Okay. Say bye to everybody. Say bye. Marisol says, bye, 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 everybody, bye, bye. She loves it. She loves attention. Okay. You go run downstairs and do what you were going to do. Okay. You run downstairs and do what you're going to do. So should we, she just wants to be by. Yes, she does. She loves being next to me. I'm so happy to see you having a good life after what happened in your childhood. Being from Cleveland, I remember watching. I guess I should post these up here. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm trying to win. I'm trying to win for everyone. Everyone gets to win, right? That's what it's about.
Yes, that voice is a little puppy voice. It's a puppy voice.
I've been thinking a lot about doing her, making little videos with her voice. You live in Erie, Mill Creek, actually, and remember watching you and being in awe of how mature you are. Oh, well, thank you so much, Cat73. Oh, thank you, old lady Snoop. Hi from Wichita Falls, Texas. The voice. Yes. The voice, Sasha.
The voices, little voices.
What happened with him? I'm new. Oh. Trex guy, you're new. Oh, you have 2 Chihuahuas and Johnson? Well, hold on. I'll go ahead and play the video. This is me, for those of you that don't know me. Here we are.
Testimony continued today in the most notorious criminal trial in
When I was 12 years old, my testimony sent my father to prison for murdering my mother. This podcast serves as a type of therapy and reconciliation for myself, and it is my hope that it helps anyone who has experienced deception, betrayal, and dark trauma. I'm Collier Landry, and this is Moving Past Trauma.
Yeah, so there you go. That will tell you who I am. And hey, drop a sticker if you are enjoying yourself. Super chat, stickers, all that fun stuff. Support the channel if you can. I have 2 Chihuahuas. They love attention and they think the world revolves around them. Yes, they do. Chihuahuas are like that. I've said before, taking care of the Wawas is a full-time job. Yes, it is. You can click a button instead of having to explain it. No, I know. I've got it all loaded up, so it's really great. It's easy. And it's the shortened version, which hopefully is like taking out some of the YouTube flags, because I was getting flagged a lot for saying murder, like, or talking about it. It's too sensitive material. Trans kids are up 5,000% under Biden. I don't think it has anything to do with politics. Sorry, Jerry. I think it has to do with the evolution of the world. Yeah. Yes. My Chihuahua is nearly Marisol's twins, about 8 pounds. I think she's probably like closer to 6. I haven't taken her to the vet in a while, because she hasn't had to go, thank God. But she is. Well, hold on. I'll finish my statement. I think she's about 6 pounds. She weighs about as much as Blondie did. So Blondie was like carrying a little. Yeah, Blondie was like 6 pounds before she got super old. How do other HMN? Oh no, I guess I need to make this bigger. How do other HNN? Oh, I don't know. Stickers. I am the gunpowder. My heart. I'm glad you can click a button and explain. You're beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Chris Allen. That's very kind of you. What was that? So anyways, okay, what was I saying? What was I talking about? Is the Wi-Fi on? The Wi-Fi is on. Oh, should we try to see if this trial's back? Since that's why you're all here. See if this trial has arrived. Or not trial, the sentencing hearing. Nope, it says court is currently on a break. How long are they on a break for? That's what I want to know. I want to go to the gym. Good morning from Oz. You have a rescue dachshund. She's pretty high maintenance too. Aw. Aw. Pig Latin. Oh, sorry about that question you were answering. It's not on here. Sorry to distract. You have a pit mix. Yeah, right. Thank you for always telling the truth and for always standing up for the rights of victims. And if YouTube doesn't like the word murder, we don't like it either. But it's a fact, unfortunately. Yeah, it's very weird. Oh, yeah, do not steal Mari's soul. She's a cutie, though. I'll tell you what. So Blondie, that's a great question, Jen DeSemio. So I'm not going to really wade into politics here, because that is dangerous territory, and I am very opinionated on a lot of things. But I'm also very middle. I'm very middle of the road. So So both sides don't like me. My liberal friends do. I love them to death, but we get into some really heated conversations, and I'm like, how can you be so daft? And then I obviously come from a very conservative. Well, I think Ohio is pretty conservative, so I also, but then I have bashes with my conservative friends. So I'm very, very middle of the road, very progressive on some things, very traditional on some other things. But there's this so you're asking about the other channels that get away with stuff. So everybody is always talking about how YouTube censors any sort of material and this and that and the other. I have found it to be quite the opposite. There are channels that I watch here on YouTube or that I see here on YouTube that are literally saying things that are, I think, very derisive, very inciting. They have a very inciting nature to them in creating a lot of conflict and a lot of hate and misinformation. And these channels are on and they have huge followings. And they all say how they're being censored. And I'm like, that is total nonsense, because your stuff is still up there and it's still making money and you have 1 million views on it. So I don't believe any of that. I think it's quite the opposite. But so it's interesting how you can say things and it's also, I'm trying to figure out, like, YouTube, like talking about a certain drug that is affecting the state of the United States and around the world, right? It starts with an F. You have to abbreviate it. But if you throw in a news clip that says the name of the drug, it's okay. So it's very weird. Since I've been getting on YouTube more, obviously you guys have seen my channel grow. I started taking YouTube seriously a couple of months ago and realizing, oh, this is a great platform. And I really, outside of my, like, the podcast is on here and this and that, but I've been learning all of these things on things that get you demonetized, things that get you in trouble. But I do see creators that use all of this, like I said, derisive language or insightful language, but then also people that don't they tiptoe around it, and then channels that have the content out there. So I don't really know. It seems to be the Wild West, as a lot of people have said. Like, you don't really know what is going to get flagged. But I do see so much content that I'm like, how is this even allowed on YouTube? I mean, not that I have a problem with people speaking their mind or saying things. So let me be very clear when I'm saying I am surprised. I don't know how it's allowed on YouTube. It's not because I am going, that shouldn't be allowed, that should be censored. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that I thought things were censored, and how am I getting censored for certain things, and how are other people not getting censored for certain things? That's all I'm saying. I find that very odd to me. That's all. I noticed a drop off on people watching now. Is homicide an acceptable world? I just said it. So yeah, I think so. It just depends on the it just depends on the context that you're using. And yes, when victims are talking about their experience, I have a lot of videos that people that I get censored on. With waxing on the inside of his butt on YouTube, and it didn't get taken down. There was a YouTube guy doing a butt cream tutorial. There's a lot of things that are on.
For Judge Stephen Boyce to return to the courtroom after about a 30-minute recess.
Are we back?
So this
Everybody
morning,
here?
this proceeding began at about 9 o'clock. We have heard so far those victim impact statements.
So it began at 9 o'clock. I guess I was
Four
on this
of
pretty
them.
early then.
Actually, we
I've been on
heard
for an hour
from
and a half.
5
What is
different impact statements. One of them
10:30?
read in addition to
So
her
9
own.
o'clock?
That was the sister of
So I was an hour
Tammy
late.
Daybell. She also read a statement from their father. That was 2 impact statements in one, and then there were 3 others, 2 in person and 1 read into the record in the court. So after about a 30-minute recess, Judge Boyce expected to return any minute now and continue the proceedings. The only thing left here is to hear from defense attorneys. So they have an opportunity to speak on behalf of their client, Lori Vallow Daybell, and they will also make a recommendation on what they believe is just sentencing. So we heard from prosecutors who are suggesting that she get the maximum penalty allowed for 6 different counts that she was convicted of a few months ago. So they are asking for the maximum sentence, and then we are expecting to hear from defense attorneys. Lori herself does have an opportunity. As a defendant, she has an opportunity to be heard in court today. And initially, in the beginning of this hearing, they did indicate that her attorneys said that she may speak on her behalf. We don't know yet if that will happen, but they did indicate that that is a possibility. So that would be the first time, of course, that we have heard from her. She did not speak in court during her trial when she was convicted on those 6 counts. So we have conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft in the death of Tylee Ryan. We also have first-degree murder and grand theft of J.J. Vallow. So 2 counts on each of those. And then we have conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell and a grand theft charge. Again, prosecutors asking for the maximum penalty allowed, which would mean that Lori Vallow would spend the rest of her life in an Idaho prison and never have the chance of parole, so never the chance to be free. Prosecutors also brought up during the hearing earlier today that she does still face charges in Maricopa County, Arizona, in relation to the death of her former husband, the late Charles Vallow, who was killed by Alex Cox. That's Lori's brother, who is now deceased himself. But she does face 2 charges there, and so they did bring that up. Of course, that would be a completely separate trial, completely separate sentencing. But their point is that there is additional charges, which then speaks to kind of her history, behavior prior to this case, things that the judge may want to take into consideration when deciding the sentence. Judge Boyce now coming back. We will go back to Fremont County Courthouse to continue the sentencing hearing of Lori Vallow.
Okay, we're back on the record on KCR 22211624, State of Idaho versus Lori Noreen Vallow. This is the sentencing hearing. We took a mid-morning break. The state concluded its sentencing recommendations, and the defense may now present theirs. The court would also thank everyone for complying with the conduct order in effect and not having any disturbances throughout the morning. I appreciate everyone continuing to comply with that order. That in mind, then, Mr. Thomas, is the defense ready to present their recommendations?
We are, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Thomas, you can proceed.
Would the court prefer if I stand, or is it okay for me to sit, given the acoustics in the room?
I think it'd probably be better if you remain seated to pick up the recording on the record.
Victims in this case. So many lives have been touched in the negative way. There is devastation and destruction surrounding this case. 3 deaths. And my heart aches. It truly does, as does the rest of my team, Jim and Brandon and all of our experts. We ache with the victims in this case. There's a lot of hurt surrounding this case, and not just the direct victims. As the court is well aware, there are cousins and uncles and aunts and people just in the general public who have been touched by this case. And that hurt can sometimes be manifest as hate. And I think that Lori Daybell is probably the most hated woman in America right now, and maybe in the world. But that hate will never bring closure to the victims. That hate will never bring about the healing to those who are hurt by this case. And hate will never bring about peace. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. So how do we stop the hurt and the pain and the loss? And I've heard from a number of people today who've talked about JJ never being able to reach his milestones or his 21st birthday, or we wouldn't know what Tylee was going to be when she grew up. We'll never see her playing in the front yard with her children. We'll never know. We'll never know what Tammy's students make of themselves as they grow up. But we need peace to replace the hurt. And that peace and that healing will only come about by love and compassion. And I hope that each person that's touched by this case, whether they're a family member or a friend or just someone who has followed this case from the beginning, I hope they can heal and find some semblance of peace again, because this world needs peace. Which brings me to love. And I think that's how we're going to get back to peace. And Lori, if she could speak to each one of those people who have been hurt by this case or been affected by this case in a negative way, her message would be one of love. Her motto is, love is the key. And Lori's a very misunderstood person. People that know her, and I mean really know her, get the chance to know her the way that I did, the way that her family knows her. They would know that she is about love. Now, Lori and I didn't always get along. Our team has had tension and frustration and a lot of misunderstanding. But overwhelmingly, an overarching concept behind Lori and everything that she says to us and everything that she does is love. So if you get to know Lori, you'd find that she's a very different person than she plays on TV. She's kind, she's loving, she's caring, she's very witty, she's insightful, she's smart. And if you talk to people that knew her prior to 2018, prior to this whole crazy series of events, you'll hear about a wonderful person who was active in her church, who was active in her community, who loved her children, very active in their lives. You'll hear people who talk about how great she was with their children in her church callings, in her neighborhood. She was a great mother to her kids. Her son, Colby, in fact, testified at trial that she was a great mother when he was growing up. She has redeeming values. Kay Woodcock sang her praises today, that Lori was a great mom and that Kay allowed JJ, Canaan, to be adopted by Lori and Charles. And there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of misunderstanding about how this ultimately came to pass. And that's probably not going to change anytime soon. There will be a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of confusion for a while. This brings me to my last topic of healing, and that is of hope. So what is hope? Well, hope is defined as a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. So what do we want to happen in this case? I think the court is well aware of the 4 goals of sentencing pursuant to Idaho Code 192521. The first and foremost is the protection of society. The second most important is rehabilitation, and then deterrence of the individual and the public generally. And finally, the least important, according to statute, is that of punishment. Now, first-degree murder is first-degree murder, and conspiracy carries the same punishment. Under Title 18, 4004, and I quote, "The court shall impose a life sentence with a minimum period of confinement of not less than 10 years, during which the period of confinement of the offender shall not be eligible for parole or discharge or credit or reduction of sentence for good conduct, except for meritorious service." So those are the 2 guiding principles that we have to look at. And I know the court's well aware of this. This isn't necessarily for the court's edification. But I think we have to think about, how are we going to heal the hurt and the pain and the devastation of this case with hope? How do we reconcile the 4 goals of sentencing in Idaho Code 192521 and the requirements of punishment in 184004 with hope? Well, we, and collectively, I'm talking about the court, the prosecution, and the defense, collectively have saved the life of the defendant. I don't think the court, nor the prosecution, or the defense team should take credit or blame for the death penalty being taken off the table as a possible punishment. In my opinion, it was a collective effort, an effort that led to the court's decision. It was a necessary outcome to a series of events that no one person can be credited or blamed. We saved her life, and that is a win. That's a win for all humanity. So now what do we do? Court can, as the state requests, find a sentence appropriate of fixed life without parole. That certainly meets the protection of society and punishment, the first and last goals of sentencing. However, if the court so chooses, the court can also give the defendant a fixed term of years to serve in prison, followed by an indeterminate term of life. And after great deliberation and thought, we would ask the court to sentence Ms. Vallow Daybell to a 20-year fixed term with an indeterminate term of life. We believe that that meets all the goals of sentencing with an added bonus of hope. So why would we give the defendant any hope at all? Are we rewarding her? I don't think so. It's not about her. Giving her hope, it's for us. It's for everyone in this courtroom. It's for everyone watching on the internet. It's for everyone who's going to watch this on television. It's for everyone who lives and breathes outside the walls of prison. Her hope will benefit society. In our opinion, if you give her fixed life, you will have essentially thrown her away. She has no incentive to rehabilitate. There is no deterrent to her or anyone else. The punishment portion is final and all-encompassing. However, if we give her hope, we protect society by keeping her behind bars well into her 70s, but she has the incentive to be a model prisoner. She has the incentive to help those women that she interacts with in prison. And over time, she changes her behavior, her routines become habits, and she helps other inmates. She becomes a better person. And as these inmates interact with her, this better version of Lori Daybell, they become better people as they re-enter society. Without hope, the likelihood of success in reaching any of the goals of sentencing other than punishment is very low, if not non-existent. Your Honor, we live in the greatest country in the world. We can do this.
Stacy and Lolly, my aunts and my uncles and my grandparents. I have had many communications with Jesus Christ, the Savior of this world, and our heavenly parents. I've had many angelic visitors have come and communicated with me and even manifested themselves to me. Because of these communications, I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world. Because of my communications with my friend Tammy Daybell, I know that she is also very happy and extremely busy. I have always mourned the loss of my loved ones, and I have lost many in this mortal world. However, I know them more than most people. I know where they are now and what they're doing. I know how wonderful heaven is, and I'm homesick for it every single day. I know we all lived in heaven before we were born on earth, and we were all adult spirits in the heavenly realm. We chose to come to earth as mortals.
Tammy
Heaven
Daybell
is
says that
more
she
wonderful
mourns
than you can
not
possibly
being in
imagine.
heaven.
I do not fear death, but I look forward to it. I did not want to return to my body when I was out of it. Even though my son Colby, who I adored more than anything, was only 6 years old at the time, and I was about to give birth to this new baby girl that I wanted so badly. I was a young mother, and you would think I wouldn't want to leave my children, but as I stood in heaven, I did not want to go back. I thought they would be fine without me because I was peaceful and I was happy and I was home. But then I was told by Jesus that I needed to go back and complete things that I had covenanted or promised to do before I was born. This caused me a lot of distress because I knew heaven was my real home and I only wanted to be there. I was free from pain, emotional and physical. But then I was shown how I would help my children and others in the future. So ultimately, I did agree to go back to my body. Tylee has visited me. She is happy and very busy. Tylee is free now from all the pains of her life. Tylee suffered horrible physical pain her whole life. I sat with Tylee in the hospital year after year after year while she screamed in pain when the morphine wasn't even enough to take away the pain of her pancreatitis. I sat there while she cried and I held back her hair while she threw up. And I am the only person on this earth who knows how much Tylee suffered in her life. She had pain every single day. She never felt good. Her body did not work right. And I don't know if that was from complications from me dying while she was being born or something else, but she had a very difficult life. She was sexually abused by her own biological father since she was 3 years old, and she was forced by family court to go visit him for 10 years against her will. I fought for her in court. I protected her. I tried to protect her with my whole life. I tried to protect her. I worried about her every single day. My beautiful children, Tylee Ashlyn and Joshua Jackson, rest safely this day in the arms of Jesus. My wonderful friend, Tammy Daybell, rests safely this day in the arms of Jesus. And I look forward to the day when we are all reunited and I too will rest with them in the arms of my Jesus.
All right, Ms. Vallow, thank you for your comments to the court. Let me ask you at this time, Ms. Vallow, are you fully satisfied with the representation you've received from your attorneys throughout this case?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, the court will conclude then with my own review of the matter and then pronounce sentence. Ms. Vallow, based on the jury's verdict of guilty in this case, it is the judgment of this court that you're guilty of the following counts of the amended indictment. Count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan and grand theft by deception. Count 2, first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan. Count 3, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow and grand theft by deception. Count 4, first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow. Count 5, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell. And count 7, grand theft. We carefully reviewed the record of this case, beginning with your prior criminal history. Very notably, you're 50 years old. These are first you've ever had. I will note, however, in addition to these convictions, you have 2 additional conspiracy to commit first-degree murder cases pending in Arizona. And it's somewhat incredible in this case that seeing you've gone from no criminal history in your life to now having been convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and you continue to face more additional counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in another state. I've looked at the recommendations in the pre-sentence investigation report. It ultimately recommends a prison sentence stating, quote, incarceration under the custody of the Idaho Board of Correction. Normally, the court would have some additional information to rely on in fashioning its sentence, including the benefit of recommendations based on a gain evaluation, substance abuse report, mental health review, and other reports. However, you elected not to cooperate with the pre-sentence investigation. As I would note on page 23 of the pre-sentence investigation report, it states, quote, Lori Vallow Daybell intends to remain silent during the pre-sentence investigation process. She has the packet, but does not intend to answer any questions of evaluators or investigators. Quote, no attempts were made to complete the court-ordered screenings due to her refusal. I'm advising you that that was your choice to not cooperate in the pre-sentence investigation, but it left me without some additional information that potentially could have been mitigating in your case. And as I proceed with the sentencing, I'll note those deficiencies in the information I normally would have in a pre-sentence investigation report. As has been mentioned by both sides here, the court has to consider certain sentencing objectives when I sentence somebody, and these are set out in cases including State versus Hill, which is a Court of Appeals case 103 Idaho 565, and it's been adopted by our Supreme Court as well. And I have to consider 4 main objectives. Number 1, the protection of society, which is the primary objective. 2, deterrence of the individual and public generally. 3, possibility of rehabilitation. And 4, punishment or retribution for wrongdoing. That case states, moreover, it's clear as a matter of policy in Idaho, the primary consideration is the good order and protection of society. All other factors must be subservient to that end. I've also reviewed and considered the criteria set forth in an Idaho statute 1925-21 on the question of whether or not you should be confined to prison and to what extent. That statute sets out a variety of factors I have to consider in weighing whether a long prison term here would be appropriate. Some of the attorneys cited already to some of the provisions of that statute, and again, it talks about the primary consideration of the protection of society, and also talks about the impact on the victim, the possibility of risk reduction through rehabilitation, and deterrence are also to be considered. There are some factors laid out in that statute that are not necessarily controlling, but weigh in favor against either imprisonment, or in this case where imprisonment's required, an extensive imprisonment term. Some of those factors under Part 2 of this statute is the defendant's criminal conduct neither caused nor threatened harm, which is clearly not the case here. That the defendant did not contemplate the conduct would cause or threaten harm. Again, that would not apply here. The defendant's criminogenic needs indicate the defendant will benefit from supervision and treatment in the community. That's unavailable, as community treatment can't occur with a minimum prison sentence required here. Another factor, were there substantial grounds tending to excuse or justify the defendant's criminal conduct, though failing to establish a defense? I don't find those apply given the facts of this case. Other factors, the victim of the defendant's criminal conduct induced or facilitated the commission of the crime. That did not occur here. Another part talks about compensation, which I don't find would be appropriate here other than on the grand theft charge. Part G, the defendant has no history of prior delinquency or criminal activity or has led a law-abiding life for a substantial period of time before the commission of the present crime. That is the single most mitigating factor I see in this case. Again, it's unbelievable that at your age, you have no prior criminal history, and now you sit here convicted of the most serious of charges. I also have to consider whether the criminal conduct was the result of circumstances unlikely to recur. Based on the evidence in this case, and in particular, considering the statement you just made to the court, I find it weighs against me finding in mitigation for that factor. And then finally, the character and attitudes of the defendant indicate the commission of another crime is unlikely, or the defendant demonstrates amenability to treatment. So those are the mitigating factors. Then in aggravation, we have more factors to consider. Is there an undue risk that during the period of a suspended sentence or probation, the defendant would commit another crime harmful to another person? Would a lesser sentence depreciate the seriousness of the defendant's crime? Will imprisonment provide appropriate punishment and deterrent to the defendant? Will imprisonment provide an appropriate deterrent for other persons in the community? And a factor that would not apply here is the defendant a multiple offender or professional criminal. I don't have an LSI score, which is one value I can look at to help determine whether or not you'd be likely to reoffend. I don't have that because you wouldn't cooperate with the report. So considering here that you've lived a law-abiding life and for a long time, you were obviously a good mother, sister, daughter, and friend to many people. I have to take that into account. You've served a very long time of local jail, over 1,200 days, and the report is you've been a great inmate, never caused a problem for anyone in the jail. And you should be commended for that. And that also shows that you are capable of that. I believe your counsel when they tell me you're an intelligent person. Up until all these events began to transpire, you've achieved goals in your life, you've done important things in your life. And I'd note that despite some of the comments here today, I have found that during my interactions with you throughout this long case, including your trial, you've been respectful of the court. Do we know what this beeping is that keeps going off? Sorry. All right, the court will next consider, and I think it must be considered in mitigation, that you do have mental health issues. I've dealt with those throughout the context of this case where there were commitment proceedings. I've reviewed those reports and have that personal information from having gone through the determinations of whether or not you were competent or fit to stand trial. The most current diagnosis the court has is from Dr. Watson, and from February of this year states you suffer from, and I'll quote, delusional disorder, mixed type with bizarre content and hyper-religiosity, continuous and unspecified personality disorder with histrionic and narcissistic features. So obviously a very complex diagnosis that's been made here. Whether or not that can or how it would be treated, I think by all accounts is unknown at this time. I've reviewed your personal history, including statements from your own immediate family members, and it's clear that something radically changed in you that led you to where you are today. In a statement made in the pre-sentence investigation report, your mother stated it perhaps best and said that you are not now, quote, the person she knew. The record in this case, including all the evidence I observed during the jury trial, indicates that if it wasn't already occurring, that this relationship with the co-defendant seemed to be a catalyst for the change. At this point, I'll note that I will not be making comments on any other co-defendants in this case, as your co-defendant is currently presumed innocent and awaiting trial. In sum, there are significant mitigating factors the court has to consider here when I consider you and your life as a whole, and that does make the case difficult. Typically, when I see somebody to be sentenced and they don't have a prior criminal history, they're given opportunities to first prove themselves on probation or avoid a lengthy term of incarceration. However, of course, some crimes are so serious that even with mitigation, there is no other reasonable option except for a prison term and a long prison term. And sadly, you've been convicted of and have committed the most serious crimes possible, and those crimes also require an equally serious punishment. To make your children disappear. The evidence bore that out at trial. You removed your children from their home in Arizona, alienated them from friends and family, got rid of JJ's service dog. You moved to Rexburg, a community where you could find 1,000 random families to take your children, and you brought them here to murder them. You had so many other options. You could have gotten divorced. You could have found someone to take care of those kids. But as the state was able to prove at trial, you chose the most evil and destructive path possible. You killed those children, according to the state's theory, and I believe it, to remove them as obstacles and to profit financially. You justified all of this by going down a bizarre religious rabbit hole, and clearly you are still down there. While you were enjoying your new life in Hawaii, countless law enforcement officers, family members, and volunteers were searching for your children. And I don't think to this day you have any remorse for the effort and heartache you caused for others who looked for your children when you knew where they were and knew they were dead. They were found dead, burned, mutilated, and dismembered, and buried like animals. After you knew they were dead, you collected public-funded assistance payments meant for them, and that was blood money you kept for yourself. And that's the grand theft charge you've been convicted of. Your sister, your son talked to you, begged with you while you were in the jail during phone calls I heard at trial, and those were very sad and difficult calls to hear. And you didn't provide any assistance or comfort to them. During the trial, when the evidence came out about how these children were found and the state they were in, you wanted to be excused and not have to watch the evidence, and were fine to let all the other people in the courtroom, including the jurors, have to bear through that. However, I ruled that you did have to sit and watch and see the result of your heinous crimes. The jurors in your case fulfilled their duty admirably. All 18 jurors we had, because we had alternates, went through the entire trial and faithfully fulfilled all their obligations and all the instructions. So we were able to get impartial jurors who weren't already tainted by pretrial publicity to decide your case. And I do thank the jurors publicly for the service they rendered. Those jurors I noted during the trial were very good at keeping their emotions in check and keeping stone-faced as they're supposed to do and be objective until the case is done and submitted. However, I did note at certain times during the trial, such as when there were videos and pictures shown of you in Hawaii at this time frame when JJ and Tylee were lying in shallow graves, the disgust on the faces of those jurors was evident, and shocking revelations about what happened here just kept coming through the trial. The crime scene was a horrific thing to have to review, and there's images that I will never get out of my mind. And I'm just looking at the pictures. Law enforcement officers who had to deal with the aftermath of what you did, I'm sure were traumatized. And I know it was traumatic as well for the jurors who had to sit through and see the photographs of these dead and mutilated and buried children. For those people who loved and cared about JJ and Tylee and Tammy Daybell, to have to see those photographs of them through trial of their dead and desecrated bodies must have been devastating. Tammy Daybell was murdered as a result of your conspiracy. She was, by all accounts, a healthy, happy mother and wife through a lot of her life. And you were out shopping for wedding rings to marry her husband while she was still alive. You were planning a wedding to her husband while she was still alive. You haven't shown any remorse for any of those actions. And she ended up being murdered, buried, had to be disinterred later so an autopsy could be performed in order to prove the evidence of what you had done. She didn't deserve any of that. You took her life away. You destroyed that family, fractured it to the point where, in the information I've had through the PSI, there are relationships that will probably never be mended that have rippled as a result of what's happened. JJ and Tylee, of course, 7 years old, 16 years old, were separate people whose lives were cut way too short because of you. Never got to grow up and be adults. The family and friends who have provided their impact statements, of course, have stated it better than I could about who they were. And it is a loss for everyone that you took them away from this world. And it is the most shocking thing, really, I can imagine, is that a mother killed her own children and you simply have no remorse for it. Even sitting here today, there's no remorse for what you did. After all of this evidence through trial, you haven't shown any remorse. You haven't said you're sorry. You haven't done anything to seek leniency from this court. There's been a lot of people during trial and here who explained the devastation you're responsible for, and you've forever altered the lives, not in a good way, for many, many people, destroying family relationships, taking people away that were loved, cared for, and needed. You may not believe to this day that you've done anything wrong, and you still may think you're justified by your religious beliefs for what happened here. I'm not here to judge that, but I don't believe that any God in any religion would want to have this happen, what happened here. And your crimes are heinous and egregious, and that alone can constitute a major aggravating factor that requires me to impose a serious length of incarceration. So after weighing all those factors, I need to in aggravation. I find that the sentences I'm about to impose will serve the interest of justice by, number one, preventing you from ever doing this again, that they will not depreciate the seriousness of your crimes, will punish you appropriately, and will serve to deter both term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. And on count 5, the conspiracy to commit the first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell, you're sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. Finally, the court will address count 7, which is the charge of grand theft. On that charge, court is going to sentence you to a fixed determinate term of 5 years of prison, followed by an indeterminate term of 5 years of prison, for a total 10-year term of imprisonment on the grand theft. Court will next consider whether sentences should be imposed consecutively or concurrently. I generally don't, I'm a pragmatic person, and I've struggled with the point of a consecutive sentence when in Idaho, a life sentence is just that, a life sentence without parole. And I've thought it through. However, when I've looked at this case and the more I thought about it, I've determined that because there are 3 separate murders with 3 separate victims that occurred at 3 separate times, then running counts concurrently would not serve the interests of justice, because those crimes all need to be taken into account separately and distinctly and individually. And you need to be held accountable separately for each of the 3 murders. So on those counts, the court will run consecutively the count 2 murder of Tylee Ryan, consecutive to count 4, the murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow, and count 5 will run consecutive to count 2 and 4, the conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell. So 3 consecutive life terms of prison. The remaining counts will be concurrent to the counts that are consecutive. The court will impose fines as requested by the state in the amount of $25,000 for all counts except the grand theft. On the grand theft, the fine will be in the amount of $1,000. The court will assess the civil penalty that was requested, and I find it's appropriate under Idaho Code 195307 of $5,000 per victim on each of the 3 victims as a civil penalty. And then finally, the restitution, which was requested by the state. Mr. Wood, if you could reiterate that number, 22,000, of what the restitution term is. And I want to inquire if there's any other restitution being sought by the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe I said 22,545. And the state would ask for an additional 30 days to submit any further restitution for the victims, living victims who have been deemed as such by this court.
The court will assess that restitution on the grand theft charge of $22,545 as shown through the evidence at trial. And the court will allow 30 days for additional restitution requests, but that will be waived if it's not submitted timely. That'll conclude the court's sentencing on the charges. Mr. Thomas, do you have any questions on the sentence?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, Mr. Wood, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
All right, counsel, before we conclude, and Ms. Vallow, importantly, I need to advise you of the rights you have now. You do have the right to appeal to the Idaho Supreme Court from this judgment of conviction, and you have a right to be represented by an attorney if you appeal. You're also advised if you can't afford an attorney, an attorney will be appointed for you at public expense, and you only have 42 days to file an appeal. You also have the right to seek relief from my judgment under Idaho Criminal Rule 35. You have 120 days to file that motion if you believe a correction or reduction of this sentence is appropriate because it was either illegal or too harsh. And finally, you may also have rights to seek relief under the Idaho Uniform Post-Conviction Relief Act. Those actions have to be filed within 1 year from the day your right to appeal expires. Do you understand those appellate rights? All right, she acknowledged yes. The defendant will be required to submit DNA samples upon remand to the Idaho Department of Corrections. I'll ask the attorneys to please turn in any copies of the pre-sentence investigation reports or addenda, so those can be kept in confidence and additional copies will be destroyed. And Ms. Vallow Daybell, you are hereby remanded to the custody of the Sheriff of Fremont County to be delivered to the
emotional, just dark, emotional testimony that they listened to during trial, and you heard more of that today. In fact, that's really what people, bright lives, talked about the hope and, that those three had, put to an end because of a dark person who they said was a monster.
There we go. Okay, that's gone. All right, guys, sorry about that. I have moved my bedroom where the router is. I plugged into the hardwire. I don't know what was going on with this live stream as far as the actual, I think it was just because I was playing it across. I have no idea. I'm going to call my internet company, which is Frontier. Frontier, you're supposed to do a better job than this, guys. So I apologize for all of this, for all the technical difficulties. They normally don't happen during these live streams. So I think it was just because I was sharing the other stream. So anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed it. I mean, enjoy is probably a strong word. Hey, stop it, papas. See, now I have a different camera and audio. So this is on my laptop. So anyways, I'm Collier Landry, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to my channel members, my Patreon supporters. Thank you to somebody who bought a sticker today, Sarah Holman. Thank you so much. I'll be back on Wednesday with Dr. Z, psychologist. Dr. Jamie Zuckerman will be joining. And on Thursday, I'm not sure who our guest is, who my guest is, but I love all of you. Thank you so much. I'm Collier Landry, and this is Moving Past Trauma Live. Thanks, y'all.
This podcast is made possible by support from listeners just like you. For exclusive content around this podcast, please consider supporting me via Patreon by going to collierlandry.com/support. Please subscribe via Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from, and please leave us a 5-star review. If you want to see video episodes of this podcast, please check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/collierlandry. You can find links to additional resources in the show notes of today's episode. This podcast is a production of Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Collier Landry.